Point A would cease to exist in this situation. All movement, all variation in position that we perceive to occur in relation to points in space occurs only in tension, in the force that unites points in space. The force or tension that unites all the infinite points of space forming linear physical objects or strings is indeed variable by its own dual nature. Although the strings formed by the tension of the void unite points of the void by the natural continuity of this, the intensity of the tension that unites the points of empty space is naturally variable by the void joining points where there is simply nothing. The variation in the value of the void tension is what allows the existence of the concept of motion. It is this elusive nature of the concept of motion that also explains why all motion is always only relative, never absolute. All movement is always only relative and never absolute because the origin of all movement is empty in its foundation, in its basic foundation. This is also why every situation of movement is always physically equivalent to a perfect situation of rest. Through the exactly proportional perfection of Newton's second law of motion, for example, we can know that all energy, that all matter is nothing more in its fundamental nature than pure motion. Therefore, every quantity of energy, every quantity of matter is always completely relative, never absolute. The nature of matter and energy never allows us to treat these concepts as being formed by absolute or indestructible quantities. Every amount of matter and energy measured or perceived by an observer always depends on the situation of movement of that observer to exist. Despite its very simple origin, despite being formed by a relatively weak and variable tension existing between points in empty space, both matter and energy can present themselves in relatively large quantities due to the fact that empty space is infinite in its extension. The variable or oscillating nature of the tension of empty space that gives rise to all motion, all matter, and all energy is perfectly exact in its proportionality, by virtue of the extent of empty space also being exactly proportional in its subdivisions or quantities proportional to its egalitarian nature. In fact, it is impossible to divide empty space in a real or absolute way, but relatively, the apparent divisions between local quantities of empty space and also of matter and energy, consequently, are relatively perfectly symmetrical or proportional. The hypothesis that the universe is eternal is the least discussed in our time. Immediacy, consumerism, individualism, selfishness, infantilism, among others which are dominant characteristics of our current society, exert an important pressure for the disregard for the eternal hypothesis. When talking about the universe, one of the themes most strongly linked to the subject is the origin of the universe. The creation hypothesis, motivated or not, occupies the #1 place in popular preference. And the hypothesis of the origin of the universe in the case of a logical or scientific evaluation is the most absurd, a perfect shot in the water. All researchers, including the authors of the Big Bang Theory themselves, agree that it is a theory that at a given moment lacks any scientific foundation, pure hypothesis, pure kick, pure bluff. The Big Bang Theory with all its pomp and circumstance is no more scientific than the story of Alice in Wonderland. The way physics works, the fact that all the laws of physics work every day in the same way, the insistent and constant repetition always obtained in all physical events and experiences, is a very strong argument in favor of the eternity of the universe. Very few people wake up every day expecting all objects to fall towards the roofs of their homes, or for the water coming out of the faucet to suddenly turn to gold. Although such events are not physically impossible, we all know what to expect from physical events that we experience, by repetition. Physics is a 100% conservative science. Never expect that what we call the laws of physics can be repealed or modified for any reason whatsoever. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel and give your like if you enjoy it.